Hello, hello, beautiful people. How are we doing today? My name is Isabel. You can call me Isa, and I am a coach here at Major League Hacking. If you're new to Global Hack Weeks, welcome. Um, and in the meantime, I would love to hear from the audience. Say hi in the chat. Let me know how you're going. And yeah, today I will be going over. I shall do this. I will be going over how to get an internship. I should probably get rid of that. Cool. Awesome. So, um, as I was saying, my name is Isabel. You can call me Isa. My pronouns are she and her. A fun fact about me is that I have seen 2,120 plus hours of anime. If you think you can beat that number, let me know in the chat. Or if you guys want to talk anime as a tangent, that's cool too. But yeah, so we are going to talk about how to get internships. My experience has been as a this is coming from an American standpoint, so I will be talking about how US companies are looking for internships, but I can't guarantee that the same experience is going to be the same for example, international students or companies in Canada or India. But I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll stop periodically and make sure everyone's in the loop. The steps that I'll be going over include applying for the role, the technical interview, the behavioral interview, and then a little bit about what to do once you get that offer. So step one, we are applying for the role. I wanted to break this down into 3 steps: knowing what you want, doing your research, and choosing your weapon. When I say knowing what you want, by that I mean what role are you looking for? Below, I've listed both technical and non-technical roles. If you're interested in software engineering or blockchain specifically, or web development, I made a goof and didn't put the check-in link. Thank you so much, Jayesh, for bringing that up. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. And then I'll leave it up just in case. Unless someone beats me to it. And then I shall be doing this, leaving it up there for a little bit. And yeah, going back, technical versus non-technical roles. I've listed a few that are technical. So there's the general software engineering, but maybe you want to specifically work in blockchain, which requires a different skill set, different tech stack. So you'd be using Solidity versus, for example, in web development, you'd be knowing JavaScript or TypeScript or SQL, etc. There's also infrastructure, cloud, machine learning versus, and AI. There's network security, data science, quantitative trading, system administration, and sales engineering. Sales engineering, I said last because I find it interesting that it's both a technical and a non-technical role. So for those unfamiliar, sales engineering is you're coding, but you're also the person that's communicating with the clients or the customers or the users and helping them understand what you built. So it's half sales and half engineering. And that brings it into the non-technical roles, for example, product management, user experience design. I will shout myself out. I have another workshop later in the week on Thursday on accessibility in UX design. So aside from just designing the user experience, I wanted to share ways in which you can make your product more accessible to people with disabilities or different devices, for example. So responsiveness, etc. So those are some things that I would go over. Quick shout out. There's also developer advocacy that's relatively new, and I found that super interesting. It goes along the lines of what us here at MLH are doing. Along the lines of that. There's also marketing, game design, and research and development. if any of y'all are interested in those, or if you want me to talk a little bit more about any of those any of those job titles, feel free to put it in the chat. I think I can put this down now. Another thing you would want to know up front is what you value in a company. So I know that one technique or one strategy that people do is just apply everywhere and like see what sticks. But one way I would hope to improve the recruitment experience is if you know what you want, you can cater your efforts to those to the needs that you have. So, for example, I care a lot about work-life balance. My mental health is very important to me. It's fragile, so I want to take care of it as best as I can. So I don't want a company that has crunch time, that has 50-hour work weeks, but no overtime pay, stuff like that. I would want a company that has benefits like health insurance that does cover my therapy, etc. There's also folks who care a lot about prestige. So this is huge companies that you know just from the name, like Google, Microsoft, I don't know, IBM, or like big name brands. Prestige can be valuable because saying that you worked for example, Roblox, can open a lot of doors because people know that company and they can say, oh, if you work for such a big and well-known and prestigious company, you must know what you're doing. And then there's compensation and benefits. How much are you getting paid? And one thing to, like a few things to note for this is there's the base compensation, and then there's benefits, there's relocation bonuses, there's if you're not if you're hybrid, then a virtual stipend or virtual office stipend, I think the term is also worth noting. I know that internships generally aren't open to negotiation for stuff like that, but it never hurts to try. I will go into that later. And other things that you would want to consider when looking at a company are location and whether or not the mission resonates with you. So if you know what you want to do and you want to know what kind of company, or very specifically the companies that you want to work for, that gives you a better approach at applying for internships. You wouldn't be applying blindly. You wouldn't be mindlessly filling out the same application over and over again. I should go into those apps that fill out the forms for you. I don't think I did that when I don't think I thought of that when I prepared the slides. I know someone's going to ask about the slides, so just in case you're not here already, I added a link tree to the announcement on the Discord server, which has all of my slides, all of my recordings, all of the resources that I have, including the one that I'm working that you're seeing on screen right now. So yeah, once you know what you want, the next step would be doing your research. This is now a narrower approach. So instead of just what do I want in general, how am I a fit for this company, or how is this company a fit for me? So doing your research on what the company does, who their competitors are, what their mission is, where they're located, whether they're located in a bunch of places or they have a headquarters in just one place or they're entirely remote. And then similar to, but not the same as their mission, what are their core values? The mission is more related to, like, if they're B2C, for example, how are they serving their customers? Whereas what are their core values is how do they treat those customers and how do they treat their employees? And then another thing to do your research on is if you're going for a specialty, thank you, Wei. If you're going for a specific specialty, like you're going into Web3 or you're going into web development, Do your research on those topics. So if you need to know the math, or if you know specific, if you need to know specific tech stacks, um, make sure you know even just a little bit going into the interview, or going into the, at this point, the application, so you know what you're getting yourself into. And then we also, okay, so the next step for the next sub step would be choosing your rep. And there are a bunch of different ways in which you can apply for different internships. The I'd like to think of this as an increasing preference, as in your chances are probably higher the lower on this list. So old-fashioned applications, it's literally a numbers game. Um, some of the links in the resources page at the end of this slide, in this slide deck, I've added a template for how you keep track of applications. I have there have been internship seasons where I applied to at least 100 places, because I went the old-fashioned way, just applied. And this is before I learned my lesson of having a more targeted approach, of knowing which companies I would actually want to work for and what roles I would actually want to do. So we have old-fashioned applications. The main tip I have for just applying the old-fashioned way is keep track of those applications. So I'm going to make a quick note and show y'all the tracker that I'm talking about, where let's see, is this the one that's good? Probably. So let's try this. So this is how I keep track of my applications. Again, this was a numbers game, so I applied to 107 places. Notion is my software of choice, and it's helpful because I can have a page that has the job description. And the reason why I keep these job descriptions is because if you apply to 100 places, chances are you're not going to remember every single role that you applied for. And then once once you get to the interview stage, you might not know what exactly that application was even asking for. So, for example, let's see. Okay, so let's say I applied for this role, and then I got the interview, and then I forgot what it was supposed to be about. Now I know through the job description that I copied and pasted that it was for a front end role. So I need to review JavaScript, I need to review Node, etc. And it'll also help me use the keywords that they used in their job description during my interview, or in this in the earlier steps. You could even tailor your resume or your short answers to this job description. For example, IBM's design thinking pops out right here. It would probably help a lot if during the interview or during the application, I talk about this design thinking and show that I did my research, as we said in the previous slide, that I did my research and know what the design thinking, what's the word I'm looking for? Paradigm of IBM is. That'll make me look better to the recruiters because I did my research and I care enough about this specific company that I know yes. So this template is shared. Way shared the link tree. It's a little like you got to go into it, but okay. At the very end, all of my resources are here, including this Notion template. Let's see. Is it the exact same one? I hope so. Hope it's shared. Okay, cool. We're good. Next. So, all of the resources that I am talking about are here. Don't you worry, I got you. So, going back to choosing our weapons and our tracker. So, there are some folks who just save a link to their job descriptions. I would strongly advise against that because companies will take down the job posting, and then if you have the link and they took down the posting, you'll have a dead link, and then it's useless. So copy and paste it, put it somewhere where you can organize it, and then that'll make it easier for once you get to the next stage of like interviewing, coding assessments, etc. What else do I want to say about applying via? So there were different ways at which I applied. So sometimes I would go straight to the company website. Sometimes, so for example, there are GitHub repos that have the applications like all. I'm running out of words, friends. Compiled, I guess. So GitHub was another good place for me to look for these internships. LifeSci is specifically a program, a local New York City program. And it's, as the name suggests, life sciences. So it was geared primarily towards biomedical research or medical related positions. And then I just chose within those roles the tech roles, or the tech-ish in the case of this business analyst position. Some of my applications also came from recruiters. I'll go into how you can either get on a recruiter's radar or reach out to a recruiter yourself. There's also the old-fashioned, just get LinkedIn to email you once there are new job postings type of thing. There is also going through your university's career center. There's also job boards like Way Up. Is there any other job board that I have here? Apparently I applied to a Craigslist job. Jobwell is another good one. Jobwell is specifically for diversity and hiring people of color or people of marginalized genders. So if you do identify with one of those, take advantage of, I guess, the affirmative action. Yeah. And then, so another good point to tracking your applications is being able to tell when you apply. So this column autofills when I copy and paste the job description. So I know, for example, that I went ham on January, just applying and applying and applying. And I knew that I started in September. Oh, probably earlier. Okay, so I started applying in August, and I didn't go hard until October, November, December, January. So some ways that I've improved this tracker now for my current recruitment process. I kind of didn't want to show it because I've been rejected a bunch of times already. But some ways that I wanted to improve it were, since these are new grad roles for me now, I wanted to keep track of the locations, as well as what the last stage was that I got to, so that I know what the bottleneck is. So right now for me, apparently it's my resume, but I'm kind of using the same-ish resume that I've had in the past, and I usually get like further. So that's something that I'm gonna work on for my own recruitment process, or internship, new grad season, I guess. If anyone has any questions about applications, put them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to go into referrals, which is a step higher, I guess lower, is a step better than just applying through the typical application forms, because there is a personal aspect to it. So referrals come from either recruiters, or sometimes they don't count as a referral, but usually referrals come from employees of the company that you're applying to. So they could be, so these referrals are people who can vouch for you. there's a, so I want to call it bad practice, honestly. There's a bad practice going around where you kind of just reach out to someone out of nowhere, maybe because you have a common job, like past employer, or a common what do you call that, alma mater, like you went to the same school, and you kind of just like, hey, can you give me a referral? Those folks aren't as valuable. Like, even if they do give you a referral, um, it won't be as strong, because those folks who you just reached out to out of nowhere won't be able to actually speak about your capabilities. They won't be able to vouch for you in a personal way, as referrals are meant to do. Whereas, for example, if you had a coworker, or you, a good example for us hackathon people is if you worked with, when you teamed up with someone at a hackathon, and then later down the line, if you kept in touch, you find out that they are now interning at a company that you would like to intern for as well. That connection is already there. They can already speak about your capabilities because they've actually seen your work. And it's a more valuable referral than just a stranger. Um, the Another example would be if you want to reach out to mentors, for example, at the hackathons. These would be folks who are higher up in um, rank. I don't want to use that word, but I guess. Um, and would their words would have more weight in terms of a referral, as opposed to like someone who was an intern and is trying to refer another intern. A full timer referring an intern would make more sense. So yeah, networking is super important. I will go into LinkedIn stuff more in the next few slides. But LinkedIn is one of the best ways for you to get referrals. There are also other ways, like in person at hackathons or networking events or school, or what else? Um, I don't know. Some people, like, I've connected with people on Reddit and stuff. Um, so network, keep in touch with people that you meet. Um, there is a misconception, or I don't know if it's a stereotype or a misconception, that us software engineers are a little antisocial. Um, Networking would be the antithesis, I want to say, to that, because referrals would make us more social, more collaborative, and it shows that we are um, that we work well with other people. That was a bit of a ramble, so I will move on to conferences and career fairs. Um, should have put a list up here of specific career fairs and conferences, but this is conferences and career fairs are great for networking, because that's literally what people are there for. And you not only have access to your peers, but also potential mentors and company sponsors. Um, some I want to add it now. Oopsie, spoiler. So, career fairs. I want to say I had a list, so give me a quick second. But some career fairs and conferences that come to mind include Grace Hopper Celebration. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's Tapia. There's also Rewriting the Code Summit. Usually these conferences are um, geared towards either a local community or um, a specific demographic. So I'm gonna paste this here, and yes, I see someone in the chat. I'm not ignoring you. I will get to you in a split second. Let me just make this smaller and make you prettier. Never mind, we don't care. So the acronyms here I will go into, but I just wanted you to be able to note it down without having to note it down. Girls Who Code is one. They're geared towards mostly beginners or younger audiences, and women or non-binary. I don't know if they include non-binary, but I hope they do. But it says girls in the title. Um, Related to that would be Black Girls Code. I didn't write that there, but it just uh, came to me. There's also Rewriting the Code, again for women, um, primarily college aged women and early career women now that they're a little bit older. An older organization, I mean. There's also Code with Clossy, similar to Girls Who Code. It's for a younger audience, and then they're kind of just aging up as they age as an organization. There's also NISB, which National Society of Black Engineers. Um, this is no longer gendered. This is more on race and ethnicity. So NISB and SHPE, which is Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. I don't know what P stands for, but I know H is Hispanic. And then there are local career fairs, like a recent one was Tech Day, which was in New York City and was very specifically for startups. Um, so those are some places that you can go to that are conferences or career fairs and are very good for networking. A very, very, very cool thing about these events is that some companies actually offer you interviews right then and there on the spot. I've heard for the in-person conferences, um, they'll actually like they have the room and you'll interview, and then you kind of find out within the conference whether or not you move to the next round, or they're going to other candidates. Um, for me, the big conferences and career fairs that I've gone to where most of that happened has been virtual, partly because of the pandemic, partly because social anxiety is horrible in crowds. And these events can get pretty crowded and pretty big. And I just know that I wouldn't like survive in there. But yeah, so I'm gonna pause for a bit before going into recruiter outreach and go into Jayesh's question, which is how different are missions company to company? Wouldn't all companies use the same keywords that reflect good values, that show the right attitude to build, grow a company? I haven't really read many missions and visions, but just wondering, why do they matter so much? Anyone can throw a few corny lines in an interview. Yes and no. So I agree they can throw corny lines, but there are a lot of corny lines, and that they can only say a handful of corny lines. So there is still like you can still learn a little bit about the company based on which corny lines they choose to use. Like some companies are very green, so they care a lot about the environment. They're carbon neutral or even carbon positive, carbon negative, as in like they take away carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Um, so there's that's one, for example, mission or core value that might not be present in all of them. Like I know Google has that little note at the bottom of their search engine where like they're green, but not all companies talk about that. So if you care about the environment and the planet that your children or children's children will inherit, then that might be something that you would specifically look for in a company. And maybe you would consider, if that is a value that you care about, then maybe you might not want to work for example, a company that uses fossil fuels or creates pollution, or um, if you care about diversity and inclusion, you might want to care. Yes, there are plenty of cheesy lines or corny lines with regards to this, because it's like a very buzzword type of let's try not to offend everyone type of thing. Um, but if that is genuinely something that you care about, where, for example, for me, I would feel a little bit iffy if most of my coworkers are, for example, white men, and I don't see people that look like me or sound like me in my team, or more of a red flag if I don't see women in leadership. That I would probably stay away from that company because of the implications of like okay, if there are no women in leadership, what are they doing to the women? Are they even hiring women, or um, are they not giving them opportunities to grow? Because like, if I as a woman do not see women in leadership, how do I know I'm going to be in leadership one day? Because that is something that I want to do in the future. So these are some ways where like the mission does matter. Something a little more tangible that's more like mission versus core value would be, um, for example, I'm trying to think like, if there are companies that are like direct competitors or they kind of do the same thing but they have a different way of doing it. um I don't know, a recent like discussion has been on AI art. If there is a company that created a platform that generates AI art, and their purpose is to supplement artists, or for example, there was this place that was shared with me where like they speed up the game design brainstorming, um, but they don't make like full blown art. Therefore, their mission would be more towards helping the process instead of removing all of the work that human artists do, and like copyright infringement and all of the many things that are arguably wrong about um, art, AI generated art. Um, so yeah, those are a few things where like it does. There are differences and they do matter. Ooh, MLH focuses on empowering hackers. Tesla focuses on sustainability and transition to green energy. Some focus on ending violence, and others focus on spreading ideas and inspiring people. Thank you for that. Awesome. I'm going to keep that up there for people to read as well. Um, and unless anyone else wants to add anything or bring up another question, I'll go into recruiter outreach, which I would argue is the most surefire way of getting your foot in the door, because these recruiters are the decision makers, not the final decision makers. They're like the first few steps decision makers in whether or not you get hired. Um, and if, for example, so it started out as, so I'm talking from personal experience. Others may have different experiences, better or worse. I'm just speaking from either what I have experienced myself or what I've seen my classmates and peers experience. So it started off as me either emailing or sending a message on LinkedIn to different recruiters and saying, "Hi, my name is Isabel. I am a senior at Hunter College. I'm studying computer science. Here are some things that I know how to do. Here are some experiences that I have. I would be a great fit for this particular role. Um, Here is my resume. Please consider me." Yada yada yada. It started off as that. And then after a while, I started building my online presence, bolstering my LinkedIn, having a GitHub page, having a personal website, etc. And having my branding where like I stick with just Isa instead of my whole Isabel, and I have the same username everywhere. Um, and I don't know what else goes in branding, like the visual aspect, I guess. Um, but that allowed that coupled with, for example, these workshops that I teach, um, and speaking engagements, or I don't know, just like putting myself out there. It has come to a point currently where folks are reaching out to me. Um, and they are saying, okay, I have this role um, that based on your LinkedIn skills might be a good fit for you, or um, it might be generic and they're just blasting it to everyone, but that's still they already attributed your email address if you received it in your email, or your LinkedIn account if you received it through LinkedIn. They already attributed that to you. So you're already in their system. You already like are in there. You skip a step basically. I kind of lost my train of thought there. Oops. But I was saying, so they're reaching out to me now. One place that I think that's where they find me. But lately, a bunch of startups have been reaching out to me, and they're like, "Oh, we're looking for founding software engineers or something like that." And as I said earlier, I care a lot about work-life balance. One downside to startups is while you have that's another thing for like core values. How big of an impact your work has either on the company or on their customers. So to me, I really care about my impact, but I also care about work-life balance because, like I said, my mental health is very important to me. So I know like to be wary of these startups. But yeah, so these startups have been reaching out asking for founding software engineer roles, and they found me through Y Combinator because I did a program through them. I'm not the main like accelerator program, just their startup school. I'm gonna get into their accelerator program one day, but not today. um, those folks are reaching out to me personally, so that my chances are significantly higher because I'm not competing with folks who they don't know about. They already know about me. They know that they want my skills, my experiences, etc. So building your online presence is super duper important, and the end goal for that is you just sit back, relax, and let them come to you. And that's a pretty cool flex, I think, maybe. I'm gonna pause for a bit because I saw a question: which subreddits related to tech to follow on Reddit? So I'm gonna open my Reddit on another window or like another monitor and look through some of the subreddits that I'm in. One thing to note that I've learned recently about Reddit, now that it has been included in my routine doom scrolling, is that there are different cultures within subreddits. So some subreddits are like trolly, some of them are mean, some of them are super duper supportive, but there aren't a lot of people in them. Um, so it's like a hit or miss, and you kind of just like have a feel of the subreddits, or this applies anywhere, but you get a feel of what you are trying to what you're looking for. But um why is there no there it is. An old lady, so I have trouble. Let's see. I have too many subreddits. They're the general. I think career advisor is a good one. They're not that. They're not like toxic or whatever. I'll go through a few of them, but I'm not gonna go through all of them. Um, so I'll actually. Oopsies. Um, I'll add them here in the speaker notes. I don't want to put them like on the slides just in case, because like not everyone asked for it. But I'll put some links here. And if there's any of them where like I know their culture and or whether they're good or bad, whether they're good or bad, or like what makes them good or bad, I'll add it here. Y'all. Okay. So, for example, one thing I learned is the generic ones tend to have mostly early career folks, like us in college, first 5 years of work. And then once you get into like mid to senior level software engineering or whatever field, they kind of go into their specialties. So no longer CS career questions. This is like mostly early career folks, which means you're not going to find like an executive or a manager answering your questions or answering the questions that are up there. It's mostly, I saw someone like explain it as the blind leading the blind, because people asking questions are the only ones to answer other people's questions. So that's something to be wary of. Um, what else? CS majors? No, I don't want to give you. That's icky, or not icky, but like it's not um, the best place. There's also, for example, if you want specific um, specific technologies or specific specialties, fields, etc. There's subreddits for like each technology. So I added something on Flutter. I'm adding something on a little more generic game development. Um, if you go into these, you'll specific ones will have more experienced folks. So there, cool. And then I kind of went on a rabbit hole, but you kind of get the point. Are there any other ones that I want to show y'all? This one's okay too, but this one's more so for like self-taught folks. Traditional college degrees. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole if I keep going. So these are subreddits in the speaker notes of the slides that you already have. Awesome. With that being said, I'm going to go into tips for your resume. These are generic. I kind of put my resume here as an example, but as we have seen in the tracker that I got, it might not be the best thing. I'm going to give my logic as to why I did things. It's up to you whether or not you listen to that logic and do it, or disagree with it and do your own way. Like, pick and choose what you want to take from it. But first thing, make sure that it's ATS friendly, readable, and parsable. What this means is, so application tracking system, software, something like that. It's basically the thing that parses your resume, reads it, and then pulls keywords and says whether or not you should be looked at by a human being. More often than not, especially if you're applying for a big company, less so if you're applying for a startup, they're read by ATSs first. So if your resume is, for example, at one point I was so dedicated to the aesthetic that I used Adobe Illustrator and made text boxes for each line and like manually put the bullet points to maintain the aesthetic, and thereby lost so many applications because it wouldn't parse right, because the text boxes were like ordered different. So it would read here and then go here and then go here and then go there, etc. So I am currently using Flow CV. It's one of many great resume builders. The link to Flow CV is in that resources page that you saw a while ago. Clickable link, so you're good there. And they have a free tier that lets you make 2 resumes in case you want, like, oh, that's a good suggestion that popped up in my head just now. Make it's like a curriculum vitae where every single job that you've ever had with every single responsibility or like role in there, no matter how many pages it takes. And the point is, you know everything that you've done. You have like a North Star where like once you have your second resume, the one that's shorter and is, for example, just 1 page, I want to put that here because I've been saying it. but I haven't outright told people, if you have less than 5 years of experience, with all due respect, you do not deserve a second page. So your resume has to be one page unless you have so much experience that it literally cannot fit, and they're all relevant. Um, Keep it relevant and under one page. Yes. So, um, my solution for that was making my font super duper tiny, which helps for ATSs, but not so much if, for example, if one case that I would see that as a bad thing is if it's printed out by an old fashioned company that like is done by a human, waste trees, etc. They would probably want bigger font. But now that everything's digital and we're software engineers, no one prints stuff, so I'm okay with having like a size 10 font. I think it's a size 10 right now, but yeah. Oh, next up we have, so this is colored because it's straight from it's called like Google's golden rule. This is how Google recruiters and stuff suggest you format your bullet points. So what did you accomplish, how was it measured, and what exactly did you do? Some of my bullet points follow this, some of them don't, just because, for example, my projects, I formatted it as, what did I win for, what was the project. It's very like, this is something that folks forget when they put projects in their resume. People probably don't know what it was or what it was about. You're telling them how you made it, but what did you make? Um, so I explained very succinctly what my project was. And to supplement that, these are clickable links. Always put clickable links in your resume. Don't let them copy and paste it. That's this goes into marketing and stuff, but putting a barrier to entry, I think that's marketing or like user experience maybe. Don't give them more work to do, so make them have a clickable link instead of a copy and paste like huge URL to your GitHub, for example. I put that here as a just in case, but they are also clickable. But yeah, I also put that icon there for when it is clickable, but I didn't outright like put the like the URL to be read or to be copied. And oh, going back. And then another thing that I specifically put on my projects is, what is my personal contribution? So for my first project, I made a good balance of, I'll go into this in the project section more. I made a good balance of projects that I did by myself versus projects that I worked with others on. I wanted to show that I am capable of working by myself, but also collaborating with others and working with different teams, et cetera, et cetera. I have bullet points on that. I'm kind of hopping all over the place. Sorry. But I wanted to specify that there is like what my personal contribution was. And that's how it's a little different from the golden rule that I'm telling you about. But as measured by Y, the green part is pretty important, especially if you're going into something like fintech or financial technology or data science, stuff like that, where they require numbers. They're going to want to also see numbers on your resume. Metrics are very valuable. If you have them, when you have them, use them. Even if they're a little vague, like for me, I said 40 plus, I said 300 plus, for like ranges where I'm not entirely sure, or it's probably changed in the time that has passed, etc. But whenever possible, for example, here I ranked 4th, I ranked 24th. Those are specific numbers, those are metrics, those show like a quantifiable measurement of what I've done. Most of the ones that I have right now are like how many people I've taught. But I remember in a previous version of a resume, I had like, I increased website traffic by X%. That's super valuable, especially if you're going to WebDev or something like that. How much your product or your contributions improved something, either the product or the company or the sales, etc. it gets the point across very easily if you have quantifiable metrics, is what I'm trying to say. Cool. And then you start with accomplished X because you have to, or not you have to, starting your bullet point with a strong verb, a strong action word that summarizes what you did. For example, ideation, design. Those are very strong, very clear, straight to the point. Even if they only read that part, they know what I did. So that's another reason why this format is super helpful. Going on to the next point, because I'm rambling, tailoring your resume to the job description. As I mentioned earlier in a previous slide, I strongly suggest keeping the job descriptions of the places that you apply to, unless of course it was like the one where I said they reach out to you, because then they won't make you go through an application link anymore. So there's nothing to put in your job description. But whenever possible, try to tailor your resume to the job description, such as, let's say, okay, this is the job that I had before. I would, for example, in my application, that's not very clear. Oh yeah, because Microsoft was pretty open-ended. Let's try ADP. Okay, yes. So here these things tell me that I want to tailor my resume to specify Java, to specify HTML and CSS, to specify Python, to specify React, Linux, and anything else that I do know how to do, but they're not specifically looking for, I can put a little bit lower on the list. Another thing super important, when you're applying to internships, they want to know when you graduate. It is to your benefit to let them know when you graduate. If you're not sure, like me, who has postponed their graduation a couple of times, change it after, I guess. But recruiters tend to, because like the motivation for internship programs is getting ahead in the talent pipeline. So these companies want to get you, a talented person, in their grasp as soon as possible, train you exactly how they do things, so that by the time you graduate, you'll work for them. That's why return offers are great. It's good for not only you, who has a job lined up right after college, but it's also good for the company because they have the exact candidate they want, because they're like they built you through the experiences and the training that you got from their internship. I would love to have a discussion on return offers versus trying other companies. If someone asks about that, I'll go over it. But so yeah, going back, it is, yes, we are going tailoring to the company, to the job description, putting your graduation date. So I put here my graduation date, and because I am not graduating, I did not graduate within 4 years, which is like the typical timeline. But there's no such thing as a typical timeline. It's A-okay. I didn't put when I started. I just put when I'm ending. Because I started in 2017, and it's a little bit a while ago. They don't gotta know. I'm still a perfectly capable person without it. Another thing that is they don't gotta know, I am still a perfectly capable candidate without it, is my GPA. My GPA is a little wonky because I started in bio, so I was a pre-med student with pre-med weeder classes like organic chemistry and molecular biology, and that tanked my GPA so badly. And even like after that, when I was in my CS classes, some of them weren't the best. So my GPA is currently below a 3.0. I do not put my resume. I do not put my GPA on my resume, because at this point, I think I'm like 2.78 or 2.87, something like that. It's only gonna hurt me. But if they don't know and they don't ask, I'm not really lying, and I'm helping me present myself in the best possible light. So one caveat to this is a lot of financial technology companies, banks, hedge funds, trading companies, I don't know, fintech stuff, they usually ask for your GPA. I don't know why they do it. I disagree with it. But they're a little stuffy and they do ask for your GPA, and they even have minimum requirements. Like they will ask specifically nothing below a 3.2, and they will flag your resume and not look at you if they see that you put your you put your GPA and it's below what they want. So that's part of my argument for why I agree with hiding your resume after a certain threshold. If for you your 3.3 GPA is too low because you're aiming for FANG or whatever it's called now, because Facebook is no longer Facebook and it's now Meta. If you're aiming for those kinds of companies, or you're aiming for fintech, and you're like 3.3 is not good enough for you, even though according to my bullet point 3.3 is way okay, it's up to you to put it or not. Anywho, once again, I want to reiterate: keep it relevant and under one page. One thing about this: if you're a freshman in college, yeah, you can get away with putting your high school stuff in your resume. Second semester freshman, yeah, it's starting to get iffy. Once you're a sophomore, it's going to look a little weird if you still have high school stuff on your resume. So once that stage of your life is done, you should also be done. Remove the high school stuff from your sophomore in college resume. And this applies to higher levels as well. So once you're in the industry, and you're already like 1 to 3 years into your role, they probably look a little iffy at you if you're still, for example, putting school projects on your resume or club leadership positions on your resume. Like it is no longer relevant for this stage in your life. So you might as well save the real estate for something else. Another a point of contention for my resume, since it's the one that's shown up here, I have so many like extracurricular activities, and I've won a number of hackathons, that it is a wall of text at this point. I put that there for the sake of putting that there in case an ATS looks at it, but it is no longer for readability at this point. Like if you can think of a way to list down all of that stuff in a cohesive but non-clunky way, please let me know. I currently do not know. But as of now, this is what works for me, and I kind of just listed out in increasing order of relevance and or prestige the stuff that I've accomplished. Moving on from resumes, because I know that Amanda and probably other people are going to go way in depth into resumes, and I kind of went a little ham on it, my bad. Going into your projects, I briefly talked about it earlier, but I'll go into it more now. First point that I want to make is it's better to have something that, even if it's not your best, it's still something, as opposed to having nothing at all. If you're going into a hands-on role like software engineering and you don't have like something hands-on that proves that you know what you're doing, it's a little iffy. So create something, anything. If you're starting out, make a calculator, make a to-do list, something. It's kind of okay to put your school projects if you don't have anything else. But it's better than not having anything to show for at all. Progress, not perfection, is the key here. That's something that like a mantra of mine, sort of kind of really. And yeah, moving on from my ramble. Having a balance between solo and group projects, again, I mentioned. I've used hackathons as an answer for a bunch of behavioral questions, which I'll go into more later. But I am able to talk about, like, one common question is, what's your working style, or what's your, like, how do you work with other people or yourself? My really good answer, arguably really good answer, is I can adapt to different working styles because I've worked with literally a whole lot of people in a whole lot of different ways. Like I think I'm at like 50 hackathon participations, and then the rest of the 20 are Like I was a organizer, I was a mentor, and right now I'm a coach. And all those different projects that I've made are different working styles. Like I've worked with different people. And that is a testament. And I could just pick and choose whichever one I remember. Because my mental health negatively affects my memory. So that's why sometimes I like lose my train of thought with y'all. But it's like that's a tangible case of something that I like. That's an anecdote that I can bring up in an interview that is really, really good. And another thing that these like different hackathon projects are good for is they're every single one of them is proof that I can work under pressure. I don't want to work under pressure, as I've mentioned, but I can. And that's a good thing to show to recruiters, interviewers, companies, etc. And having these projects is tangible proof, like a proven track record of that. I want to. I see that there are folks asking questions about projects. I would like to finish my last 2 bullet points, and then if I haven't answered it yet, I'll go into your question. But I'm not ignoring you. I'll let y'all. So, if most or all of your projects are from hackathons, make sure that there's something that's actually complete, because it's a little like the grimace emoji. That hackathon projects are often incomplete or unfinished, or like for example, do not like a lot of hackathon projects don't follow best practices. Like we commit all of our we push all of our commits at once instead of having small incremental changes, or we don't comment or document our code. We don't have a full readme except like if we copy and paste our dev post pages. If those are the kind of hackathon projects you have, try to have something that's actually complete, even if it's on a smaller scale, because it'll show that you can finish what you started. If it's a hackathon project that you took from a hackathon into a personal project that you took further, even better, because it shows that, I don't know, one way that you could frame it is when you're passionate about something, you go the extra mile even if it's not expected of you. Flowery words, friends. And then finally, someone was asking for good starter projects or like self-learner projects. I'm gonna answer this. I'm not, but yeah, a good way to start is open source. You wouldn't by definition of open source, you wouldn't have a whole project to yourself unless you start the project. I've done that a couple of times where I start a project, make a bunch of issues, random people on GitHub will contribute to my project. I've never finished one that way because the contributors are few and far between unless it's October. I can go into Hacktoberfest if you're into that. But that's a good place to start. If you're, for example, if you're a self-learner, one way to look at this is, for example, if you just learned about for loops, then you could look for issues in GitHub that specifically ask for a for loop or are specifically for beginners. And it can be a good guided way to start, as opposed to just out of nowhere blindly not knowing where to start making a huge project on your own. Moreover, open source allows you to show that you are up to date with industry standards and best practices, because these projects are these repos can be very particular, down to whether or not you have a new line at the end of a file, or the way that you format your comments, or whether or not there's a different way to do nested loops, etc. If you do open source, it balances out the speed of hackathon projects with the quality of open source projects. Arguable. And then if you contribute to big projects, I've always wanted to contribute to the Linux kernel. I don't entirely understand it. I haven't passed my operating systems class yet, but I feel even if I just add one line to that, it would be a personal achievement to be able to say that I wrote to an operating system. Or even if just if you're into web dev, a lot of your hackathon projects are React or Next or whatever new thing there is now, newfangled technology, being able to contribute to those repos is pretty cool too. And then, yeah, another thing is if you want to start small, this isn't like coding, but documentation totally counts towards open source. Even if it's not like hardening your skills, it builds credibility because, for example, you know that heat map, that green heat map on your GitHub, it shows that you're active. It shows that you contribute. It shows that the stuff that you do make gets accepted by the maintainers of that repository. And yeah, so localization and translation is like translation is changing it into an entirely different language. Localization is a little more nuanced. You could be translating when you're localizing, but it could also be like, for example, there are different concepts to an American versus a British or an Indian, and then but like American versus British, it's the same language, you're not translating anything, but locally there might be differences in how you do things, or I don't know, spelling of color. But yeah, so those are some things. And then I'm gonna go back to this question. Second semester sophomore, haven't participated in any hackathons, haven't interned before, and have to get started with projects. So this is a good question, and I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of folks that are in your position. So I'm glad that you asked and spoke up in behalf of everyone else that might have had this same question. If you don't have any hackathons yet, if you haven't interned yet, and you don't have other stuff to put, I would hope that you have like non-relevant experience, like maybe you worked at a Starbucks or a Best Buy. You could frame that in a different way so that even if you don't have the hard skills, you still are a competitive candidate. So for example, if you're a barista at a Starbucks, you could talk about your customer service skills. You could talk about your adaptability. You could talk about your ability to work under pressure, because I'm assuming working at a Starbucks during rush hour is way more stressful than a hackathon. At least for me. But yeah, so you could add that. And then another thing would be if you're the kind of person that's into certifications, or I know that there are specialties like cloud or infrastructure. Those are like they love certifications. You could get free ones. There are places like Udemy. What's the other one? Start with a C. I don't know. There's Udemy. There's LinkedIn Learning. There's that place that does virtual internships. Coursera. Thank you, my dude. Yes. So Coursera is another place for you to get certifications. You can totally add that to your resume to fill it up. And then virtual internships. I remember JP Morgan started it like years ago, and then everyone jumped on that bandwagon. UPMC virtual internship. Where did I get Forage? They changed their name. They rebranded, but the Forage has I'm gonna put this in here in my handy dandy list. So let's see. If you don't change, oh, okay, cool, nice. Okay, so that's a virtual experience program, but it's a virtual internship. You could totally rebranding, whatever. But that is another way for you to fill up your resume. Yeah, plenty of different ways. And of course, start now. It's not too late, and it's better late than never. I'm like monkey. No, Gyata? No, what's the word that? Master Uguay. I'm sounding like Master Uguay. Cool. So we are good with our projects, unless anyone else has any questions. Oh, I want to put it here. Possible alternatives to internships if you're just starting out. I had mentioned certifications. I had mentioned non-tech roles. I had mentioned school projects, I think, etc. And anything else? Certifications, non-tech roles, school projects, and school projects. Open source. Cool. I'm gonna leave it at that and let y'all find the rest. And then I'm gonna go into LinkedIn. So when I mentioned previously networking, your strongest tool for that is LinkedIn. It's becoming more social media-y these days. Like they're cringy influencers and stuff. But one of the most powerful things about, I don't think that that's there. One of the most powerful things that LinkedIn can do is the search engine and the search filters. Because, for example, you can narrow down to a specific company, to a specific city, to a specific position. I think I want to demonstrate this. So this is something that I learned surprisingly from, not surprisingly, but I got this from being a hackathon organizer. My first role was sponsorships, which meant I had to look for and talk to and cold outreach a lot of people. So I had to learn the art of looking for people. Might be stalking, might be not, we don't know. So, for example, I want to look for, or actually, I want to go into the entire search, the search thing. Yes, okay. So if I want to specifically look for people, and I want to narrow it down to, for example, I want folks who are in New York City or generally New York. Sometimes people like change the way that they put it. So if I want someone local to me because I want to have a coffee chat with them, for example, this is what I do. And then if I want, so one way that you can do it is through their current company, but that like lowers, like narrows it down to people who are currently working for the company that you're, the company in question. But if you want to, for example, look for people who have worked at Google and Microsoft in the past because you have two offers and you don't know which one to choose, then you might want to go through the search bar instead of the filters. So I want to say Microsoft and I want to say Delta. So tiny little thing that I thought of when I was looking for companies that I wanted to work for. If you work for airline companies, you can fly for free. Friends, that is a really cool perk, especially if you're into traveling. If like the rule there is you can, like, if there's a plane and there's an empty seat, you can take it and not pay for it. But if they're overbooked, you gotta back off and give up your seat to someone who actually paid for it. But still, really cool perk, friends. Pause. So yeah, there's, I'm at like half an hour left, and I am like nowhere near done. I am so sorry. Yeah, so search filters, that's how you narrow them down. And then, for example, if you want someone that's a recruiter instead of a software engineer because you want to like speak to the decision maker, or if you are interested in data scientists because that's the role you're looking into. So putting that in your search query narrows it down to exactly what you're looking for. You can even you used to be able to like narrow it down to people you're already connected with, or second means you have at least one mutual connection. Third is like you know nothing about the other person, or like you're not connected with the other person at all, like third degree in that case. But yeah, so I'll go into that, I promise. But okay, another thing to know for your LinkedIn: have a professional looking photo. If you have a selfie, it's a little, but it's a little better than not having a photo at all. But if possible, you literally just need a wall and to prop up your phone. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need a DSLR for it. And then this is where you can flesh out all of your experiences. Since there's no limit to real estate, you don't have to limit it to one page. So if possible, put in all of the links, put in all of the articles, describe in detail everything that you've done if possible, considering NDAs and stuff. Like, let it out in your LinkedIn. It helps recruiters find what they're looking for and helps you be on more people's radars, etc. And now, AC the technical portion. I, along with possibly many of you, have a lot of trouble with this. So, 3 types of technical assessments. There's the coding challenges, the online assessments. Those there's the technical interviews, and more recently, take-home projects. Coding challenges are, if you're familiar with LeetCode, they're those kinds of questions. They're kind of like word problems in math when you were in middle school. Yeah. And that's kind of different from when you're at work and you have like a whole multifaceted situation going on. That's one of the things I'm like not so okay with OAs, because they don't entirely accurately reflect the way that you're going to be tested at work or like challenged at work. But it is the way it is. These are the current metrics of success for applications. Similar to how SATs before, when we were still in high school, aren't really a good indicator of how successful we'll be in college, always aren't the best indicator of how well we'll be working in the industry, because there are some folks who just memorize solutions. I strongly suggest against that. I advise against memorizing stuff. I'll tangent into this. There is, I actually want to say always. So there's always a technical assessment of some sort. It might not be a full-blown like LeetCode question. It might not be a full-blown interview. It might not be a full-blown project, but you are going to be checked for your technical skills, because that's what they're hiring you for. It's a balance. There are some companies that care a lot, almost entirely on technicals, and there's some companies that weigh behaviorals just as heavily or rarely more. So in short answer to this is technicals and behaviorals are either at the same level or technicals are rated higher. But behaviorals are kind of like pass fail. It's either you're a cultural fit or you're not, whereas technicals are a little more like sliding scale. If you're a freshman, then it's okay if you don't know, binary trees. Whereas if you're a senior, you gotta know trees and graphs and stuff. So yeah, that is that. I will, so balancing hackathons, developing and hackathons are a little like go hand in hand. And it's a little like you can develop at a hackathon. So hands-on skills and hackathons go hand in hand. You're good there. Those are perfectly balanced. I don't know what CP stands for, but data structures and algorithms. I guess coding practice CP, I'm guessing. But that's where it gets a little harder because, like I said, of the way that they're different in terms of like paradigm shifts or like the way that your brain works. One way that I want, like the main suggestion that I have is right here. Consistency is key. Do not cram 20 questions in one day. None of it will stay in your brain. We have a finite capacity in our memories and processing power, similar to computers and CPUs or whatever. And it's just not a sustainable way of learning. Similar to not memorizing, don't cram. Competitive programming. Oh, that like do you remember Google Kickstart and like those other programs? That's what competitive programming reminds me of. They have like competitions for this stuff. I'm gonna add a note. I'll add it later. Google Kickstart. I'm putting this here. I'll add more to it on the slides, but I'm a little cognizant of the time now because I know someone's after me, or like someone's gonna present after me. But yeah. So consistency is key, and go through each topic in succession. So there are a bunch of resources online, some of which I already put in the resources page at the end, where you go through, for example, all arrays, and then all linked lists, and then all trees, and then all graphs, and then all sorting, and then all searching, etc. And going through them topic by topic will keep it more organized in your brain, and the lessons and the patterns become clearer to you. So like you will figure out, okay, these kinds of questions are definitely going to need linked lists, whereas these ones are definitely going to need trees, that kind of stuff. Later on, once you're like later in the stage of preparing for leak codes, like you're solid in your foundations and you know the topics really well, that's when you can like randomize your leak code questions. Once you get into medium and hard, once you get into hard, randomize it. Like don't just stick to one topic. That's when you like cement your foundations. There you can just not go through specific topics. But once you're starting out, it's best to go through a curriculum or blind 75, stuff like that, where there's a path for you to follow. Technical interviews are the same kinds of questions as leak codes, but this time there is a human being, there is an interviewer, and they are asking you questions, they are guiding you, they are asking, clarifying questions. If you finish early, they ask, they make it a little harder, like, okay, you figured it out with arrays, but what if it was like this? Or what if you need linear time or something space? Like they make it a little bit harder if you have extra time. Or one thing I prefer with technical interviews as opposed to online assessments, and chances are you're going to get both. I haven't often encountered interviews without assessments. Sometimes assessments without interviews, but those are a little iffy to me, because why would you want to hire me without ever talking to me? Like I could have copied and pasted the code from ChatGPT for all you know. So technical interviews, super duper helpful. And this is where your critical thinking and communication skills will really shine, because it's not just about getting the question answered, it's also about expressing your thought process. So it is like, I've had, when I was like really active in like info sessions and like recruiter Q&As and stuff like that, very often the software engineer interviewers hate it when someone just goes straight into coding. Like you can hear them like clacking in their keyboard and you don't hear them explain anything. Even if they answer it super duper quickly, it does not outweigh this is the word from the recruiter, arrogance. Like you look arrogant if you just straight up answer the question without, for example, asking clarifying questions. That's one good step to, for example, show your thought process as well as bide time while you figure out how to get started. Ask clarifying questions, ask constraints, ask, think about the edge cases, even though I would suggest not accounting for every edge case up front. It would be good to, like, what was I saying? Shoot. Yeah. So think out loud, don't stay silent. Clarifying questions. Asking your recruiter, okay, this is the approach that I think would be good. It might even be helpful for you if you go straight up brute force, and then work your way up, because chances are, this has happened to me a couple of times where I have no idea how to approach a question, and then I brute force it, and I think out loud, and I either figure out how to comment, like I common sensed my way through traversing a tree when I never learned trees in class. And that was through talking out loud and the support of the interviewer. Because ideally, hopefully, what I've heard, I'd like to believe that these interviewers want you to succeed. They want you to get to the next stage. They want you to get hired. So they will give you nudges in the right direction. Where, for example, let's say your approach is so brute force, you got 3 nested loops. They're gonna give a hint that's like, okay, what if you try this thing? I'm blanking right now. I'm sorry. I haven't coded in a while, but these interviewers will help nudge you in the right direction. And when you prepare for technical interviews with that green book, for example, Cracking the Coding Interview, there are actually hints at the back of the book where at optimum points, or like at certain points in the interview, the interviewer gives you those hints so that you are better steered towards the optimal or the ideal or the the best answer. And that's why I prefer interviews. It's more personal. I can really shine, because while I am not the most efficient coder, I'm good at, I'd like to think I'm good at talking. I'd like to think I'm good at teaching. I'd like to think I'm good at explaining stuff. So these are where I redeem myself, even if I don't cover every single edge case in an OA. So yeah, quick tangent on, yes, you can still be considered for an internship. One thing I want to note for all of the international students listening to this, international students I refer to international students as either you're in the country that you're applying for, but you don't have work authorization, like you're on a visa or a refugee or seeking asylum. I don't understand all of the immigration stuff, but you have to you'd have to do your own research on, for example, if you're a Nigerian looking for an American internship, what Nigeria's policies are in terms of work authorization. So for example, for me, I started out with a tourist visa, and then I was in school at the time. And then by the time I started wanting to work, I had already gotten a green card through a petition. But I know that there are other folks who need the H-1B visa, and like there's a lottery for that. And apparently I learned from one of the mentors in the Discord server that there's a different visa for like special skills, which of course programming is considered a special skill, where there's no lottery and the chances are a little higher. But that's because less people are applying, not because more people are getting accepted. So there are a bunch of different options for you. You will still get considered, but it's a case-to-case basis on your nationality, your current passport, on which company it is. Because if you're, for example, on those visas, they're going to have to sponsor you. They're going to have to say, okay, this person is entering America because I'm going to hire them and I can vouch for them for as long as they're working for me. And you know those like posts on LinkedIn where they're like, oh, I'm going to get deported if I don't get a job in X amount of days. Those are some things that you need to consider if you're an international student. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. But yeah, so those are, yeah, I'm glad it helped. Awesome. And I'm going to go into take home projects. So these are relatively uncommon, but if you're in a like specialized field, some front end development internships do this. I've seen data science projects, or small companies with very specific products. They will ask you to use their product in their in your interview or in your take home project, stuff like that. But basically, you make something in a certain number of days. It's literally homework. Your assessment is homework. And I personally like these the best because number one, there's no time crunch, or there's less of a time crunch, because you have more time to work on it, less pressure, no one watching over your shoulder. And it's a way better, it reflects what you're doing on the job, because you're literally like doing the job before you get the job, as opposed to what I am now realizing is a word problem, a math word problem. Like, so I like take home projects. They're a little bit more work, but they're a lot less pressure and more reflective of what you would actually do at the job. Going into the behavioral. So this is something that other folks have asked about. What I would want to note about this is, oh yeah, I already mentioned it's like a pass fail, where like if you are, for example, super socially awkward and mumble through everything, or you're an a-hole, or you're arrogant, or you're rude, or you're dismissive, or you're interruptive, then not a culture fit. Even if you finesse your, or you do your technical really, really well, if you're an a-hole, chances are it's not going to make up, like your technical might not make up for that. So ways to ace the behavioral interview is prepare for like common questions. Basic one, tell me about yourself. Even if they don't say tell me about yourself, they are going to say introduce yourself, or give you a time indirectly to introduce yourself. If you're not introducing yourself, you're doing something wrong. And my method, or like my template for this, is present, past, future. In this case, hi, my name is Isabel. I am studying this. I am doing this. I am interested in this topic or this technology or this specialty, and then go into what you've done in the past. This is going into like, okay, I have a proven track record in the thing that I want to do. Or if not, for our beginners here, I have transferable skills that still make me a marketable and competitive candidate for this role. So remember what I said about like, okay, if you want to go into sales engineering, for example, you can use your Starbucks job to say that you're good at customer service. And then you go into the future. Moving forward, I plan to blah. For example, there are like career fairs, where there are a bunch of folks that I'm talking to, and I might not exactly know everything about their company. One thing I would do that I've already set up for y'all to understand the context of is, moving forward, I plan to work for a company with XYZ core values, X mission, Y compensation, or I plan to work for a company that cares about my impact but doesn't give me crunch time, stuff like that. Or I plan to create meaningful websites using Next.js and Tailwind CSS, stuff like that. Or it could even be, I don't know, a personal thing for me. I plan to get on Forbes 30 under 30, or I plan to what other things did I want to do? I don't know, but like stuff like that. Moving forward, having goals would be a good place to segue into the role. Like I want to have an internship in XYZ, which is the thing that you're applying for. If it's like on the interview itself. Another thing would be strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, don't say perfect. Oh, no. Weaknesses, don't say perfectionism. Do not say perfectionism. You could be perfectionist, but that is such a tacky, like, cookie cutter answer. You could be a perfectionist and your weakness is perfectionism, but say it in a different way that doesn't use the word perfectionism so it doesn't sound tacky. Moreover, don't focus too much on the negative, because usually they say strengths and weaknesses, so you say both at the same time. Even if they don't focus too much on the negative. Think about what you're doing to fix or cope with it. So um, a weakness could be um, what's a good one? Because if I say like my mental health, I might be like overkill, um, or like broken record. Let's say, oh, maybe let's try reframing perfectionism. I could say, I have too strong an attention to detail that I get too caught up in the weeds, but I have tried to cope with it, or I've tried to remedy it, or I've tried to mitigate it, big flowery words, by keeping track of the big picture goals on a post-it on my monitor, or having us like keeping track of the timeline or the flow that is given to me by a product manager. Stuff like that would be a good way of framing something that is a weakness, but you like self-awareness is a really good thing to have. You could say that as your strength as well. Being self-aware of the thing that you're weak on allows them to, for example, not give you the thing that you're weak on, or teach you to hone your weaknesses so they become strengths, or give you accommodations. I would love to talk about that as well if that is something anyone is interested in. Asking for accommodations and speaking about accessibility, even through the internship, like in the interviewing process, you have the right to like accommodations. It can be as simple as asking for closed captions, or in the case of like interviews, written instructions to go with verbally explaining stuff, being explained stuff, for if you're hard of hearing, or if you have auditory, I forgot what word it was, but it could also be if you have an anxiety disorder, or a psychological disorder, and you need extra time. I've had experiences with companies that either give me time and a half. So instead of 45 minutes, it's, oh, I don't know how to do math. Instead of 50 minutes, it's 50 plus 25, 75 minutes. Whoo, math. There have been times where they removed the time limit entirely. So that's pretty cool. Another like tidbit of wisdom that I want to impart is, what's the word? Closed mouths do not get fed. Something like that, where like if you don't ask for what you want, you're not gonna get it. So yeah, slight tangent, going back. For your favorite project, mention your tech stack, mention your personal contribution, and some general stuff, aside from preparing for specific questions. For the behavioral, STAR method is really good for those case study type of questions, where like, tell me about a time you did this, or tell me about a time you experienced hardship, or when you failed, or when you had difficulty, or when you worked with someone you didn't like, or stuff like that. Even if you don't, because like I already like spitfired a bunch of questions there. Even if you don't prepare for every single one of those, knowing to do the STAR method, where you talk about like the context, the situation, and then what you had to do, the task, what you did, the action, or like how you addressed the situation or the task, and then the result. The result here is like the thing that arguably is the most important. So don't forget to talk about that. Instead of just saying, I did a thing, say, I did a thing and it caused, or it improved, or it streamlined, whatever. That result is super duper important because that's the point that you're trying to make. Instead of just the action, probably the result is more important. And if it's the type of question where like um, it's more of like a asking about what kind of person you are type of question, then the result would be, I learned my lesson. Like that still counts as a result. And it's a better way of ending than I goofed and I did this thing. Now you're saying, I goofed, I did this thing, and I learned so I don't goof again. So yeah. And then finally, for the behavioral, make sure you have questions. So you know that thing that recruiters or interviewers say, do you have any questions for me? Or like they explicitly say, I'm going to leave X number of minutes at the end of the interview for any questions that you have. Some people don't care, but there are some interviewers that don't like it when you don't have any questions because you didn't prepare. You're not curious. You're not taking the initiative to know more about this role that you're trying to get into. Like, do you really care enough if you don't have any questions? Or do you really know everything that you don't have any questions? So make sure to prepare your own questions. Cookie cutter question, if they haven't explained it already, would be, what are my next steps? Or what can I expect if I move forward to the next stage of the interview process? You could have specific questions about the internship program, like if you're in this part of the interview stage, you could ask like, okay, how do I choose my teams? Do I get to choose the team that I work with or the product that I work with, or is it like a lottery thing? Do the hiring managers get to choose? Did I apply for a specific team from the get-go? You could ask about feedback loops. That's something that I learned to be wary of. Feedback loops. So is there any way that I know from my manager what I'm doing right or wrong, and concrete ways that I can improve with a specific timeline, yada yada yada. Or asking about the company. Something that helped me, for example, I interviewed for Microsoft back when it first came out that Xbox was trying to buy out Activision Blizzard. And I am relatively a gamer. Like, I'm a casual gamer, not like a competitive gamer like most people in like game dev. But I expressed my interest by saying, I read the news and I saw that Xbox was acquiring Activision Blizzard. What does this mean for the future of Microsoft in the gaming industry? Or what does it look like if I want to specifically work with Xbox? Like that, those type of questions. And of course, nothing personal about the interviewer. Maybe something like, if it's engineer, you could ask what their day-to-day is like or what their team is like, but nothing personal. Big no. And then yeah, so that's it. And then hopefully I'm almost done because it's 52. Okay, step 0 or step X, the offer. Once you have the offer, be wary of exploding offers. Some people are not aware that sometimes people, like, companies have deadlines with their offers. The shortest that I've personally encountered is, I'll give you 2 weeks to say yes or no to this internship, or else I'm taking it back and giving it to someone else who wants it. So that's something to be wary of. There are either rules or laws, or at the very least social niceties in place that prevent them from, I don't know, giving you a 24-hour deadline. But in general, exploding offers are a red flag, or at least distasteful. Another thing is making sure you read the fine print in your offer, like your compensation. Again, I would love to talk about negotiation. I have a resource for that in case I don't get to it. Make sure you read the fine print. What happens? So, for example, something that happened to me, I was supposed to be in person in Atlanta, but then everyone except people in Washington were going to be remote in 2021. Was it 2022? Sorry, last summer. So the fine print said, I was like, what is going to happen to my relocation bonus? the fine print said that was going to turn into a stipend for my home office. So that, and then the rest of it would be their, they gave me a laptop, they gave me a monitor, they gave me a keyboard and mouse and stuff. So that's the fine print that I would like look into at the offer once you get there. Whenever possible, don't be afraid to negotiate. I got the few times that I tried to negotiate, so I tried to negotiate with Microsoft, which is notorious for like, oh, we don't negotiate intern salary. But I grew the cojones and I asked, and my recruiter was like, no, sorry. But she was like, I'm proud of you for asking anyway. I have full-timers who don't even bother to ask, but you did. Keep it up. So that's like, you don't lose anything if you're polite about it. So give it a shot. You'd be surprised, because like we tend to, someone was talking about like imposter syndrome and self-doubt. I haven't read the whole paragraph because I'm like cognizant of the time. I hope no one kicks me out. But be careful. Sometimes we feel like we're not worth as much as we actually are. And doing your research on like what other people are getting paid, either within that same role or within that same city or within that same company. Glassdoor is a good resource. Negotiate. And then finally, think carefully before you renege an offer. Reneging is like going backsies on an offer you already signed. It's okay if it's like, I don't know, you find a way better company, or you want to switch careers, or you're going to graduate somewhere else, sometime else, something like that. Maybe don't tell them specifically, especially if you're reneging for another company. Don't tell them you're reneging for another company. Like you're going backsies on someone you already gave your word to go to a slightly better offer. That will look bad on your network as well. Like, not all the time, but sometimes it can look bad on your network. I have heard of like, for example, people who go to big schools like UMich or Waterloo, or I don't know these big schools, but basically some of these big schools with strong career development centers, if an alum reneges, they frown on the rest of them. They're like, ooh, what if they renege too? Something like that. And like overall, it just makes you look bad if you can't keep your word. So like, think carefully before you accept an offer. Think carefully if you're waiting on other offers, etc., etc. And then finally, resources. Whew, I got 4 minutes for questions. Whew, I did not expect me to ramble that long, but I hope this was helpful. In order, I'm just going to briefly go through the resources. That's the template that I went over with the job description and the different columns. Remote Job Hunters is for folks who, I know that a bunch of y'all are from outside of the US. Remote Job Hunters is specifically for remote jobs. They won't care which country you're in, except legally for taxes. Like there are some, I don't understand legalese, but even if you're not in America, if you're getting paid by an American company, you still got to be sponsored in America sometimes, depending, I don't know. So yeah, worth noting. Flow CV was that resume builder that I mentioned. 11 out of 10 would recommend. They even have a application tracker if you want like a GUI as opposed to a database. Neat Code is like Leet Code, but it's very streamlined, super duper cool. I haven't entirely finished it, but they have like video explanations of every single question. Super duper helpful. This is a little secret that I have. Basically, these yellow ones are complete questions that I've encountered myself in a coding assessment. So these are like live examples. Rippling gave me like these. I'm like, you're not supposed to do this, but what are they going to do to me? They already rejected me. I'm like, Roblox, this is an offer that I actually received. So these are the questions that I got. I Googled them after Oscar Health was an interview, like a technical interview. These are the questions that they gave me. I have answers for some of them. I am not going to say they're right. Lord knows they might not be. Are there any of these? Oh, probably the Google one. So I probably answered some of them. But yeah, so those are helpful. Yeah. And then Cover letters, in case you care about those. Dang, I'm out of time. But the so cover letters aren't mandatory for most roles. A lot of recruiters even forego them because it's a lot of work to read cookie cutter paragraphs. But if you do want to write a cover letter, or you love a company so much, or you have experiences that are very tailored to that industry, for example. So I was in biomedical research, so I had to have a cover letter for this biotech company because I wanted them to know that, I don't know, I could do PCR or CRISPR or whatever. And yeah, so I have like short answers. Why do you want to work for this company? That's another behavioral question that I would love for y'all to check out. Or Lord. So I put my research and stuff there, and why I care about that company. This is specifically for startups. These are data structures and algorithms. I remember Jayesh asked about DSA resources. These are helpful. Product management specific resources, because y'all get case studies, not technicals. Sometimes you get technicals and case studies, which is a little overkill, but the PM specific ones, these are good resources. What do you think you should get paid was a wonderful article in the New York Times about negotiating, and it's a little bit it was from a woman's lens, and women are paid less than men historically. So I found that very helpful. And then the last thing that I added was the virtual experience program for people who don't have stuff to add to the resume yet. Now I'm gonna, until they kick me out, I'm gonna keep talking. Cool. So I have applied to your internship. I am assuming that this is the fellowship program, because you said your. I am not in charge, or I do not have any knowledge of the fellowship program, but there are folks here that are specifically for the fellowship program, if that is what you're interested in. Way is one of them. Just go on the Discord server. There are channels specifically for the fellowship program that you can ask about. I know a little bit about it, but they're going to be a better resource. Yes. Hey, hi, Nathan. Or Dimmer. I don't know what you go for. I'm going to finish this up. And then words of encouragement for those with imposter syndrome or self-doubt. I saw this dealing with the interview process, especially having failed during a technical portion. So I'm just going to spitfire a bunch of positive affirmations that totally work. So if you failed before in general, that's okay, because you learned from the failure. Ideally, you learn from the failure, and that will make you less likely to learn again. So every failure is a step towards success. Oh, I like that one. So if you want to, even if you fail, that's okay. You'll learn to be better next time. Specifically for self-doubt, I remember this TikTok that was like, I'm gonna stop thinking I'm an imposter that just convinced everyone that I'm not that I'm better than I actually am, because there like so many people believe in you, or like are at the very least not thinking you're an imposter. So they can't all possibly be wrong, you know? So that's like another way that you can frame it, so that you don't feel as much self-doubt. Like positive affirmations are like reassurance or affirmations from other people. If you don't believe yourself, because I often do not believe in myself, or like my own words or my own affirmations, if I hear other people complimenting me, I'll totally believe them. So that's another thing, like way to encourage yourself. I have this thing from therapy, so mental health stuff. If you are, if you're feeling like an imposter, or you feel like you haven't done enough to deserve whatever it is you don't think you deserve, make a wins folder. I like calling it that, a wins folder. You list down all the things that you've accomplished, you've done well, that are good about you. It can be something as like, oh, I won this hackathon, or I'm a good friend, or I really know how to make spreadsheets. Like those are wins nonetheless. And being reminded of that will remind you that you are a winner. A win is a win, or whatever those, I don't know, I'm like quoting TikToks that send help. But yeah. Okay. And then yeah, if I find more, I'll let you know. I'll keep going. Time behavioral assessment quizzes. From my understanding, those are the ones where like which shape is next, or like on a scale from 0 to 1 to 7, which do you more resonate with, that kind of thing. Those are very quantitative, and they don't hold a lot of weight in the assessment. It's more like just another thing to whittle you down on. They're not like absolute yeses. They're more like, if it's a no, it's a no. Kind of, yeah. Cool. Send a connection request on LinkedIn? Absolutely. Yes. Wait, cool. So I'm going to leave it here so that folks can find me if they want to. Nice. Twitter, I don't really use. Instagram, it's on private. But LinkedIn, I'm definitely there. If you want to let me, if you want to add me on LinkedIn, I would appreciate it if you let me know where you're from, so I will know to like prioritize your connection. Even if we don't have like mutuals or like common connections. And it's good practice for when you are reaching out to folks who don't know you, to add a note in your LinkedIn connection request. You don't have to click on message, which sometimes has a lock icon. You can just say connect, and then there's a pop-up that says add a note. That's the one that you want. Cool. And then yay. Yay. Okay. Future. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for the positive feedback. I really appreciate it. And future sessions are how to use Google Cloud Platform. I am going to just spitfire, literally squeeze in every single Google Cloud product in a hackathon project, because I've won GCP before, and I don't know, I thought it would be a cool little thing to mash together. It's going to be a little impromptu where like the audience is going to help me figure out what to make. I'm just going to like prepare how to use the features that I already know how to use. But that's a cool one. That's tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I have accessibility in user experience design, because I care about alt text, I care about closed captions, I care about colors and typography, and etc. So that's important, and I would love to talk about that. And then I'm almost done. Let's see. New tricks. Awesome. You're very welcome. I'm glad it helped. And we are done. Awesome. Thank you for your time, everyone. I hope this was helpful. I will see you next time. And nice. Bye, friends. Don't forget to drink water. Yes. Bye, friends.